We're going on our first big journey today in the MG ZSEV. We're heading to the Forest of Dean. When I say a big journey, take that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We're travelling to the Forest of Dean from where we live. It's about 70 miles, so there and back it's about 140 miles in total, which is similar to the range. It's, I estimate, more or less doable, but I'm not going to risk it. So what I'm planning to do is to top up at some point on the way back, hopefully at a charge point very close to where we're stopping. Last night I plugged the car in to a 3-pin plug using the granny charger. We're still waiting to get our charge point installed, so I left it charging overnight just to top up the battery. When we left, using economy mode and the air conditioning, it was saying about 161 miles, which surprised me. I mean, that's pretty good. And so far on our journey, if I just look at how we're doing, it says that we're averaging at the moment about 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. We've travelled a distance of just under 34 miles and we've got 125 miles remaining, so that is more or less consistent with the range that we had originally. So that range is not far out. We're travelling at about 60 miles an hour. I've got the MG Pilot on, and I've got to say it makes driving on this kind of road extremely easy. We're currently on the A417, about midway between Cirencester and Gloucester. The total trip should take us about 1.5 hours. There are a couple of routes we could have done. We could have gone a different way, but this, I feel, is a bit more scenic for the latter part of the journey. There is a lot of road noise, but no more than you'd expect really in any similar car at this kind of speed. And it does mean that although this is a very quiet car at low speeds, when travelling at motorway speeds, you've got a similar amount of in-cabin noise to what you'd expect in a petrol or a diesel car. We've currently got the air conditioning on because it's a really hot day, and with the air conditioning on, the heat inside the cabin soon builds up. Roughly speaking, I find it makes a difference in our predicted range of about, on a full charge, of about 12 miles, something like that, which is quite shocking. It's a lot more than I would have expected.
At the roundabout, take the second exit onto A417.
Made it. It took us about 1.5 hours to get here, which is what I was hoping. There was a bit of slow traffic just outside of Cheltenham going down Birdlip Hill, and I really enjoyed seeing the car adding charge back into the battery during that part of the journey. On the whole, I stuck to about 60 miles an hour maximum. I think my average speed was about 42. Average speeds are always a lot less than what you'd estimate them to be, and it was a really easy journey. When I was on the big dual carriageways, I used MG Pilot, and on some of the smaller A roads I was using the Lane Keep Assist. We've travelled just over 65 miles coming the route that we followed, and at the end I was left with 95 miles range, which is more than enough to make it home on. So there was absolutely no reason for me to have any range anxiety. I'd be quite happy going back without charging up with the car as it is. I'm not going to. I want to get a charge because I've not yet used a rapid charger, so I want to see how that works. But if I don't have any success with local rapid chargers, then I may well just do the journey going all the way back. Air conditioning was on all the way. I even had over 100 miles remaining on the range until just the last few miles, and then it started getting very hilly, and at that point my range went down a little bit. But the nice side is, going out of the Forest of Dean, there's more downhill than there is uphill. So I'm really pleased with how things have gone. All along, I've limited my expectations of this vehicle. They haven't been great, and that sounds weird given that I've just bought this car. But as a result of having lowish expectations, I've got to say, I am constantly finding myself surprised by some of the things it does and how well it does them. The Forest of Dean is like a forgotten part of England on the wrong side of the River Severn, but this area really is lovely, and it's a place I come several times a year. Most of the time that I come here, I bring mountain bikes along, and we go to a place just a few miles from here called Canop Cycle Centre to do some of the mountain biking trails. I fully intend sometime in the near future to use the car to bring my mountain bikes along, but I'm in a couple of minds as how to do that. Should I put them in the back with the back seats down? They're quite large, or would it be better to mount them on the roof? And if I mount them on the roof, what kind of effect is it going to have on the range? If you've got any experience of that, let me know in the comments. Does mounting something on the roof have a major effect on the range? And if so, by how much? Headed just down the road to Speech House, just a couple of miles away, where there is this Polar rapid charger. Unfortunately, having tried several times to connect, both via the app and also using contactless payments, absolutely no joy. I've tried to contact Polar but can't get through to them at all. So I don't know what's going on here. I think our option now is to go back to Gloucester and use one of the Instavolt chargers that they've got there, which I hear are very reliable.
Development reducers, and all of them shoot at once to increase DPS and crash reward. Actually no, one just to store the whole map on.
Okay, after our lack of success at the previous charger, I've come to Gloucester and managed to find this Instavolt charger. Instavolt have an excellent reputation, and yeah, it is now charging. My battery was at 50%, so to be honest, I would have had no difficulty making it home as I suspected. But I felt it was just as well to get it charged, partly because I've not done a rapid charge on it yet and I wanted to see what the process was. This made it really easy. It accepted Apple Pay as well, so it was just a case of taking my phone, tapping it really here in that area, and then once I'd done that, I just had to plug in at the front of the car down there. Hopefully you can see that. And it started charging. It took a little while for the car just to communicate with it, but now it's giving some details here. So I'm just going to give it a charge maybe for about 20 minutes, something like that, maybe half an hour max. It's not going to take very long, just to give me a bit of a top up. And then I'm going to head on my way back home. Well, we've got back after what I think's been a really nice day out, and the car has performed wonderfully. The range has been far better than I thought it would be. As I mentioned earlier, I'd have no hesitation really in doing that journey off a single charge, something which, to be honest, I didn't think I'd be able to do. Yeah, we had that problem with the charge point at Speech House. But to be honest, I was kind of expecting that because I'd checked beforehand on ZapMap, and several people had said 2 weeks ago that they were having some issues with it. If I'm to be frank, it's not good enough. Polar need to sort their game out regarding these points, because rapid charge points that don't work is going to put people off the idea of electric cars. And although the infrastructure for electric cars has come along in leaps and bounds over the last few years, if I'm to be entirely frank, I don't think it's good enough yet for an average person. An average person would be freaked out if they turned up somewhere like I went today and found that the charge point wasn't working. At present, you really have to think carefully about your journeys beforehand. You've got to plan where you're going to go, obviously where you're going to stop. And I think electric cars will only really become mainstream, truly mainstream, once you can set off on a journey without worrying about where you're going to stop. And then you can just stop as and where you like. We need more charge points, and we also, most importantly, we need to make sure that they're reliable. It's inexcusable them not working, and I'm a bit miffed today. I did have money on the Polar Instant app, an app which, being frank, I found rather buggy. It didn't work too well, and it's very annoying that having put money on there, I can't access my money. I can't use it to give myself a charge. The InstaVolt worked brilliantly. If I'm to be honest, my one gripe with InstaVolt as a Yorkshireman is that it costs 5p more per kilowatt hour than many other chargers. But ultimately, if you're on a long journey and you need to charge, I think it's worth paying 5p per kilowatt hour more for just the assurance that it's going to work. And from what I've heard of the InstaVolt chargers, they do work. So there's a bit of a challenge here for other people to up their game a little bit. In the meantime, though, I'd be interested to hear about any journeys you've had. What have your experiences been? I've got a lot of confidence now after doing this journey about doing slightly longer routes, but I now know that I can go further afield and not have to worry really about charging at all. I've seen what the vehicle can do. What have your findings been? Have you had some interesting journeys? Have you run into trouble charging? How about charge points? What charge points have you found the most reliable? Which ones have you found the least reliable? Let me know in the comments below.